Hello friends, welcome back to Toy Cafe. I am your host, and in this video we're going to put together this adorable little doll bag that I designed. This is completely my own design, so let's get into the video and I'll show you what I did. So we start out with some fake leather and a pattern. So this pattern is something that I put together myself through quite a bit of trial and error and lots of doodling on the computer. And it came out pretty well, but there's still room for improvement. So for the first part, I'm going to be cutting out the pieces of faux leather that I'm using. This is all faux leather. There's no real leather being used here, so no animals gave their lives for this little purse. Yeah, I'm going to be mostly cutting out the pieces that are needed to put the whole thing together. And these little triangles here are relief cuts so that this piece of leather can, or pleather, can go around a circle, an arc. Yeah, so that's why they're in there. And next we're going to be cutting some pieces of cardstock here and combining it with this tooled fabric. And this is going to be the lining or the inside of my little purse. I want it to have a nice lined inside in pink as well, match the outside. Yeah, I'm going for a black-pink combination. I think that's a nice color combination. Looks pretty cool and a little bit tough, feminine at the same time. So I am going to be using quite a bit of the Beacon Hill 3-in-1 glue throughout this build, but I'm also going to be doing some saddle stitching as well for the faux leather, just to keep everything held together. And you'll see this a few times as well. What I'm doing here is I'm clamping the faux leather down to create a crease. With faux leather, if you use heat, because it is just vinyl, you can have a permanent crease, but if you simply clamp it into a shape that you want and leave it, it'll stay in that shape for some time and then eventually it will go back to normal. So you can have nice bent pieces without any ugly creases anywhere. So I got some more cardstock here and we're making more of the inside pieces for the bag. The way this bag is constructed is most of the inside pieces actually hold it up and hold it into shape, and the pleather sort of just sits on the outside to give it a nice look. So the cardstock and the lining pieces are really the foundation for this bag, you could say. Yeah, being very careful to trim there. And you also notice that I'm trying to get the lines all nice and straight on the material, the pattern that's tooled into the material. Yeah, trying to do a real nice job here. And we're folding over the fabric onto the cardstock. Ooh, a little too much glue there. Ugh. And that's just to give us a nice clean edge without any fraying. All the fraying will happen on the back side, and that's going to be all covered. And there we go. We got two of them. This is going to be the front and back inside. And now we're cutting the front and back outside out of some pink faux leather. And I'm cutting very carefully. This is sped up 300%, and it's still going kind of slow. Yeah, I wanted to be so careful to stay on the line. Even then, I kind of wandered right over to the edge of the line in a few spots. So this is the top of the bag that's going to form the flap cover. And the top has two layers. It has a black inside and pink on the outside. So this is the inside black. And what I've done is I've cut this exactly to the size I want, and I folded it over, clamped it. So you can see I got those nice bends in there, and those creases will eventually come out, believe it or not, which is amazing. That's the fantastic part of pleather, is it doesn't stay creased. It eventually just pops right back. And this is the outside piece. This is the pink leather outside, pleather rather. And yeah. This is cut oversized because whenever you have a piece that's folded like this, that's how it's going to be shaped when it's on the bag. The outside layer actually has to cover more area than the inside layer. So I've cut the outside piece oversized, and we're going to clamp that for a little bit, put some nice bends in there, and then we'll glue that together, but that's for later. So let's unclamp our center piece here. This is going to be the bottom and the sides of the purse when we put it together, and we're going to glue it directly onto the inside front and back. And like I said, this is going to give our purse its structure and its shape by being the scaffolding that everything hangs off of. So we'll start gluing these little tabs onto that piece of cardstock in there, and we'll try to get them all stuck down nice and even. I'm checking the inside to make sure that my joints are nice and tight. I don't want to have a gap where you can see the inside of the fake leather there. I want to have a nice finished look. I want to be able to open this purse and look inside and believe it's still a purse even in there. So that's why I'm making sure everything fits nice and tight. These little tabs did not want to stay down. And too much glue. Oh no. The real danger here is getting glue on the bottom or the sides, because that's where it'll be seen. These little tabs, if they get all mucked up, it's no big deal. But the bottom of the black there, we don't want that to get any glue, because that's what you're going to see. And now we're going to put some holes in, because we are going to sew this purse. And sew it extensively. So I've got my marking tools there, my leather working tools, and we're just marking out holes on the front and back outside pleather, the pink pieces, and I made this little printout just to help guide me along. And yeah, we're just pounding away. Again, this is sped up significantly. I was very careful laying these out, trying to get them all just perfect. And as I'm doing this, I'm beginning to think I'm biting off more than I can chew with the amount of sewing that I'm going to have to do on this little purse. But it didn't come out too bad. It all worked out in the end. It just was quite a bit of sewing. About 90% of this project, again, you won't see because it's all off-screen sewing. Yeah. So we got the big comb there marking that straight line. There we go. So let's go back to the cover now that we have a nice shape there. And you can see the black piece, which is upside down here and being glued heavily, is actually starting to flatten out almost perfectly. And it's only been about an hour. So yeah, that's how good faux leather is at going back to its original shape. So we get that glued up heavily. I don't have to worry about squeeze out here, because once I apply the top piece, I'm going to trim the whole thing. So if we use too much glue, that's fine. Not enough glue, and it won't be fine. So we put the glue on pretty heavily, and we want these edges on the top there to line up almost perfectly. We don't want to trim those, but the edges that are hanging down there near the bottom, those are the ones that are going to be trimmed. So if they line up, great. If they don't, well, that's okay too. And I'm going to clamp this in place in the shape that I want it to be when it's done, when the glue dries, just so that everything is the correct size when I go to trim it. Because if I glue this flat and then attempt to fold it over, the two pieces are going to want to slide against each other to cover those different lengths like I talked about before. So this way, if it's glued in the position that it's going to be when it's done, it should be the right size. And you can also beat up your camera there too. So I'm going to start marking some holes on this too while this is all clamped up. And I got some masking tape here. And with the masking tape, I can then make marks on my faux leather. The faux leather doesn't like taking marks from pencil or other things. And you don't want to use permanent marker because that's permanent. So I'll throw a little piece of masking tape on there and you're all good to go to start adding marks that are easily removable. So we start with our punching awl and get the center mark started, and then continue with the combs. You always want to make a center mark whenever you're marking these holes, because you want them to be even. So if you start from the center and work your way out, they will be even. Even if the last one isn't quite perfectly even, it'll be the same as on the other side. Sorry, I'm trimming the pink. That's a little bit bigger than the black, and I'm being very, very careful with this. I don't want to trim any of the black, because the black is the shape and size I want the final product to be. I just want to trim the pink so it's down to the same size as the black. So a lot of little nipping here and very careful use of the scissors, but it comes out pretty nicely. And these are nice sharp scissors, so I can just shave off a little bit at a time. And let's start marking the holes. Now that the glue is dry, I can just flatten this out and mark holes because it's the right shape. The pieces are in the right position compared to each other. So we can just flatten out, pound our holes, and when we bend it back, everything's going to be perfect. And there are a lot of holes. But before we start sewing, we're going to finish assembling the pieces. So a little bit of glue. And we'll put the front on, and we'll try to get that lined up nicely. I have a few lines on my piece of wood there to help me keep it straight. And we'll just tuck that in there and squeeze it together with my fingers to make sure we have a nice seam all the way around. There's glue all the way through here, but it's the edge that's the most important, because that's the spot you're going to be looking at. Ideally, I don't want any part of this coming up, but at the same time, I don't want any glue to squeeze out either. So You got to be very careful. And then we're going to fold over this seam. This gives us a nice finish edge on the inside, and we're going to clamp that in place because it is such a small little piece of material there we're trying to bend over. We'll just use some clamps and wait until the glue dries before we take those off and try sewing a little bit. You know, those clamps are very handy. And now we can start sewing. And so this is the first line of sewing we're doing. This is a basic saddle stitch. One piece of thread, you split it down the middle and you put it in through each hole twice. I'm sure there are plenty of tutorials on YouTube about saddle stitches that'll help. And here you can see the kind of difficulty I had trying to get this needle to go through, because it has to go through a layer of faux leather, cardstock, the lining material, and another layer of faux leather. So it was a little bit difficult to get the needle through sometimes, but it went through. And once you do that, because you have such a long piece of thread, it gets all tangled up with each other, and you got to untangle it until it will work out for you. You got a nice little knot tied there, lots of those happening. You know, get her around there. And there we go. And that was one stitch. Now we just have to do this 700 more times. For the parts farther inside the purse, I couldn't use the needle, so I used this little awl, which is a pretty handy tool. It has an eye on the end of the needle instead of the head of the needle, so you can use it to pass the thread into the purse and then take that out, thread the other end of the thread through the eye, and use it to pull it out of the purse. And we'll get it out there, yeah. And you just pull it nice and tight, and you got your saddle stitch. Very nice. And it works in little confined areas like this really well. But the problem is that you do have to keep rethreading the needle every time you want to pass the thread through the material. So if you find that enjoyable, that's definitely going to help. We got our snap here now. These are pound-on snaps. Normally, most people use sew-on snaps, but I wanted pound-on ones because those are the kind that you'll see on purses most of the time. So, and they're pretty easy to use. You just set the piece on one side. The other side acts like a receiver in a rivet. And you have this little tool, and you just pound, pound, pound. And it's set. Never going to move. And then one on the body of the bag as well. I'm going to need that to clamp it together, and there we go. I've added some straps as well, and Infinity is modeling that bag for us right there, and it came out pretty nice, I think. Yeah, this was a simpler bag, but the amount of sewing and the amount of little fiddling it took really made it take a long time. But overall, I think it's worth it because it's a cute little crossbody bag. Looks like something someone would wear. Oh, where's my cell phone? Looks like something a young lady would wear to if they were out and about being active, running to catch the train. There you can see the handle there a little bit. Kind of looks like a bracelet, which is actually what it's made from. Yeah. So that's my little mini bag. I hope you enjoyed that. And if you enjoyed this video, please consider hitting the like and subscribe. And if you enjoy my videos and whatnot, please consider hitting one of the Amazon links down at the bottom there in the description. But in the meantime, I want to say thanks for watching. Bye-bye.